Welcome to episode 26 of Elves, Rings, and Nerdy Things. We are shorthanded today because Sam, if you've been listening, is now a father, and we've been giving updates throughout the episodes, but the big day happened last weekend, and Sam's going to be out of commission for a while.
Yeah, shout out to our sweet, squishy niece and for Haley for doing the dang thing.
And that is not Sam's voice you just heard. Because we're trying to adapt and figure out what we're going to do in the meantime until Sam is ready to start recording and watch movies and shows and a bunch of different things for the podcast, I have my spouse with me here today. Carly, how are you tonight?
Hello, I'm good.
That is good. So we are adapting. This is going to be a relatively short episode.
It'll be good.
It might come in about 20 minutes. But I think the whole point of it is fantasy sci-fi isn't for everybody. And I think it's safe to say, Carly, that you weren't as engaged.
It is for everybody.
Yes.
It should be
as
for
we've said.
Yeah.
In like a cultural, racial aspect, it should be for everybody. But in terms of personal preference, it might not be for everybody.
That's true. That's very true.
And I think it's safe to say before we started dating almost 10 years ago that your engagement with fantasy sci-fi was pretty limited. Is that safe to say?
That is very safe to say. I would say close to zilch, mostly.
Okay. When you were a kid, we're going to take our listeners through a timeline of your history.
Perfect.
When you were a kid, what fantasy sci-fi content did you engage with?
Well, we were a Dragon Tales family, and I would say that was a perfect segue into fantasy in my early years. I would say pretty much anything on PBS actually had a lot of fantasy, which I very much loved.
And even to this day, you're a large fan of Arthur, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
I do love Arthur. And that is technically, one could say fantasy, right? They're all talking animals, including aardvarks.
These are animals that can talk. So I think definitely Arthur would count. It really, most of the, now that I'm thinking about it,
Cyberchase,
Cat Dog.
Cat Dog was scary.
Cat Dog was a little creepy. Rocco's Modern Life. Like, yeah, technically all fantasy. We had talked, Sam and I, in the last episode, or a couple episodes ago, in our Why Fantasy Sci-Fi one-off, that for me, a big thing was Pokemon. Were you ever engaged with Pokemon at all? Did you play the game, watch the show?
Nope, I did not.
You weren't a Digimon fan, were you?
I was not. No, okay. I made some homemade Beyblades. I think that was really popular when I was a kid.
Beyblades is
yeah,
pretty great. What about your young adult years? Were you, and I know this is stereotypical because you identify as female.
Yes.
But were you big into Twilight?
I dabbled in Twilight. I think a lot of people could say that the Twilight books are actually pretty good if you read them.
I haven't read them. I watched the
I think you would actually like them.
I think I watched the first two movies.
You should listen to...
I keep going back to...
Tom Haverford.
Yeah. Parks and Rec. What's her name? The religious one. So much quivering.
Oh, yeah. I can't remember her name.
And staring longingly. And young girls
it's good.
Quivering.
It's perfect. It's pretty good. I mean, I dabbled. I wouldn't say that was probably the highlight of my fantasy teen years, but I would say that it was.
But it is a way.
A thing.
It was a good, like you said, like your Dragon Tales was your segue.
Yeah, it was a good soundtrack. Yeah.
It could have been a good segue for a lot of youth.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure it was.
And it was right in the end of Harry Potter there.
Mm-hmm.
You, I know, before we got together, preferred Harry Potter to Lord of the Rings and other things, Tolkien.
Yes.
Talk to us about Harry Potter.
Well, I think the reason why I liked Harry Potter so much as a kid is just because that's what we were exposed to. That's just what our dad read to us before bed all the time. And so I'm sure if we were read Lord of the Rings, then it would have resonated a little bit more. But yeah, we were big Harry Potter people. And so a little bit of an issue now that J.K. Rowling is, problematic, but that was definitely our main fantasy, I would say, for probably most of my years, reading the books and then watching the movies, going to the premieres and stuff like that.
When
I think it's a
premieres,
cool world of Harry Potter.
when premieres were actually at midnight,
Yeah.
the night before.
Yeah, that was fun.
I just had a flashback to me being in middle school. I know that I haven't had this thought probably in like
What
15
is it?
years. I also liked Harry Potter when I was a kid. My mom read me the books. And I remember
Shout
being
out to
on the
Robin.
shout out Robin. I remember being on the school bus and a religious kid on our bus. I'm not going to name names. I do know the name. He looked at me when I had a Harry Potter book in my bag and made fun of me for reading Harry Potter.
Yeah.
He called me Harry Potty.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were just going to say he was saying it was like sacrilegious or something.
I mean, that's why he didn't like it.
Oh,
His family didn't like it, but
that's mean.
he called me Harry Potty. And I find it very humorous now.
Were you sad?
I really repressed it. Yeah.
Oh,
I
yeah,
shoved
you've
that
never
in
told
there.
me that
Yeah,
before.
fuck that guy, right?
Yeah, boo, whoever that was.
I just find it humorous now that someone was making fun of me for being a fan of something that was so culturally significant,
Yeah.
right? Anyway,
No, clearly, yeah, he was on the wrong.
12-year-old
But
me
yeah, no, I think
was really bothered by
a
that.
lot of kids got pushback for Harry Potter. I know Aaliyah did. Shout out to Aaliyah, my sister.
Longtime listener, Aaliyah do.
Yeah, she had some backlash many times from some religious folk for reading Harry Potter, I remember.
But not just Harry Potter. D&D with the Satanic Panic in the 70s.
Witches.
I'm sure Lord of the Rings got some pushback as well. But anyway, sidebar, just that memory flashed back to me for some reason. In terms of Tolkien, our podcast is called Elves, Rings, and Nerdy Things. How much did you watch of the movies before we got together? Did you read the books? Did you watch the animated Hobbit movie? Did you do any of that before we got together?
Definitely did not watch the animated Hobbit movie. No, if I'm being completely honest, I don't think I read a book or watched a movie before we started dating.
But everybody, that has been fixed, remedied. Yes. I have.
Look at us now.
Look at you now. I'll say most of the things we've covered on the podcast, I've included you in the watching of them.
Mm-hmm.
Except for the turkeys that were pretty bad, like the D&D movie. I watched that mostly on my own and a couple other things. The animated Lord of the Rings by Ralph Bakshi. I didn't make you watch that one. Mm-hmm. But of all of the things that you've watched and we've covered on the podcast, what's your favorite material? Is it Rings of Power, Legend of Vox Machina, Lord of the Rings?
I think, you mean like fantasy in general, not just Lord of the Rings?
Yeah, it could be anything that we covered, yeah.
I think I like Legend of Vox Machina. Yeah. Just because it's really cool that it's people that are playing and they turn into an animation. I think that's pretty neat.
Who's your favorite Vox Machina character? Because we know I'm very vocal that
you like Grog.
Grog and Scanlan.
And Scanlan
are my two. Oh, are you a Pike fan?
I'd say Pike.
So a couple episodes ago, and I need to apologize for this, I was talking about how far behind I was in the newest campaign. And I said I was like 10 episodes behind, but I think I'm like 20 to 25 episodes behind. I didn't realize how far ahead they were.
Dang.
But I have a lot of catching up to do. But that's good to know. Legend of Vox Machina, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I've been telling people I love the live stream, and the live stream is great. But having people sit down for 5 hours at a time to watch those episodes is a tough ask. So when I found out that they were making the show, I was very excited because it was a manageable way for you to get the story.
Mhm.
I knew I wasn't going to be able to sit you down in front of a TV for 5 hours at a time, 4 hours at a time. No, I'm grateful and happy that you like it.
Yeah, I do. And Lord
It's a
of the
good
Rings
thing.
too.
And Lord of the Rings. That's
Yeah.
fine. Well, what else? What do you want to talk about?
Well, should I ask you a question?
Sure.
Okay.
We don't have any notes, so this is kind of just trying to come up with
Let me think fantasy. So if you could pick one genre of fantasy that you haven't gotten into yet, that you'd be interested in, what would it be? Like, for example, I think something that I never got into as a kid, but I've heard a lot of people talk about are warrior cats. Have you heard of that?
Are you talking about like
Series? It's like, I don't know. It's apparently a huge thing. People are really into it.
about Thundercats?
I thought it was called Warrior Cats. Is it called Thundercats?
There's a show called Thundercats.
No, I think it's a book. I think it's like a series. I don't know. We can
Hang
sidebar it later, but
Sam and I do this all the time. I'll Google it while we're talking.
I think it's a big in the world of fantasy. I'm sure that there's a listener out there that is into elves, rings, and nerdy things and warrior cats.
There's a Warrior Cats book series.
Yeah, it's a book series. Yeah, and it's people are super into it, and I never. Yeah.
Holy shit.
See, there's so many books. That's something I would want to get because I'm curious. I just am curious what it's like. Yeah. So,
oh my God.
I know. Yeah. So for yours, what would it be that you would get? Would it be Twilight, you think?
I can tell you it wasn't the 12-volume collector set of Warrior Cats.
No, we know we can get it so easily. It's only
$70.
$70.
Which I guess for 12 books isn't that bad of a deal.
I guess, yeah, books or series or movies if you could get into, or if you haven't explored something yet and you wanted to.
I would get more into Dragon Ball Z and some anime stuff.
Were you into Avatar?
Last Airbender?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Which I guess Pokemon is kind of like anime a little bit. But yeah, I do more of that. I know there's people who really like Naruto.
Oh, yeah.
Some manga stuff. I would dabble in it.
You haven't tried it out yet?
No, I used to watch Dragon Ball Z a little bit when I was a kid, but that was just because there were cool kids at school that watched it, and I was trying to force myself to like it. But I watched like a few episodes and couldn't really get into it. But maybe as an adult, I could try again. I don't know.
Yeah, I bet you could find it somewhere.
I just finished reading or listening to on audiobook Neil Gaiman's American Gods, which was very, very good. So if you're into like mythology, I would highly recommend American Gods. It's also a TV show on Stars, which if you're not a book reader, I guess you could just watch the TV show.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good rec.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't even really think of anything else. I guess I could read Twilight. I couldn't stand the movies.
No, that's why I think if you read the books, I think you'd be
okay,
at least a little bit impressed, I guess, or understanding of maybe why people like it.
You just went from impressed to
I changed it. I don't know. I think you would probably be impressed.
What's her name? Stephanie Meyer?
Yes.
Well, so we live so close to Forks, Washington now, and maybe we should just.
We probably should. Your parents went. We didn't go.
Oh, yeah. So my dad got kind of swindled by Robin into going to the cafe.
She said she didn't even mean to. That was just the only cafe that was available, which I don't buy that.
He's not buying that. So Greg finds himself in a cafe surrounded by
cardboard cutouts
of Twilight characters, which is probably his nightmare, I'd imagine. Greg is not a fantasy sci-fi guy.
Not Star Wars?
I don't think he really partook. And I told him once that I was very jealous that he graduated in 79. So he was in high school when the first Star Wars movie came out, which was 77, something like that. So I don't know what happened. He was the prime age that George Lucas was going for. And for some reason, it just did not stick with Greg. Maybe we got to interview Greg. Let's get Greg on the podcast.
Yeah, next week. That's a good idea.
And we'll just do a deep dive into his high school trauma of not being a fan of Star Wars.
Yeah, there'd probably be some good stories.
I think that would be a pretty good episode. If anything comes out of this episode is that we figured out we needed to talk to Greg. And with that, Noodle is starting to get a little anxious. But we do have to leave off with one bit of sad news. There was breaking news over the week. The voice actor who played Thordak, the Cinder King, Lance Reddick, who we talked about on the podcast multiple times, unfortunately passed away on the 17th. I think they said natural causes. He was only 60 years old, but very sad. So give positive vibes to Lance Reddick, who now knows the secrets of the universe. And we will be sad as we go forward in The Legend of Vox Machina with a new voice actor for Thordak. But that, unfortunately, is life. Thanks, everybody, for sticking with us for this episode. We don't know what we're going to do next week. Sam, I think, will be ready, but he's getting like 3 hours of sleep a night. So I guess we'll...
Yeah, if that, probably.
Yeah, play it by ear with him. But in the meantime, keep engaging with nerdy things. Please reach out to us on our Facebook page, Elves, Rings, and Nerdy Things. You can email us at elvesringsnerdythings@gmail.com. And we'll see you next week.
Bye.